Um, I want to talk about balance poses in a chair. So, what can you do with folks when you're working with chair yoga to help them improve their balance? So, let me say a couple things before I sit down. So, I spent about 6 years working in a nursing home, assisted living, independent living facility. And that was the beginning of my yoga career. That was way back when. I worked with folks who had strokes. So they often had lost the use of one side of their body. I worked with folks with Parkinson's disease, with Alzheimer's disease, all sorts of chronic and of course, dementia, all sorts of chronic health issues, right? So when I talk about, and by the way, that was the beginning of my career, and then I spent many years working at Ollie here in Asheville, which is the adult education learning part of UNC Asheville. So I did that for a number of years, and I've worked at other nursing homes as well, and many different medical settings. Okay, all that being said, the reason I put that first is because what I see going on in the yoga world with chair yoga is a lot of like, let's figure out how to do warrior two, in a chair. And that's fantastic for somebody who does yoga and has lots of capacity for abduction of their, and like, that's fine. I know I took a workshop with a guy who had MS, Eric Small. This was way back in the day. I don't even know if he's still alive or still teaching, but that's the kind of stuff he taught. And it was helpful for folks who had already been exercising a lot and were mobile. But the people I worked with, oh my God, like I would never ask them. Like there was no way they could do something like that. That would be ridiculous, and so if you learn chair yoga and you learn a bunch of like, here's how you do warrior one on the chair, and like that it's not transferable, folks. I'm sorry, I get kind of picture provoked about it because it doesn't make sense in nursing home settings. My heart is with yoga teachers who want to work with folks with chronic conditions, the 6 out of 10 Americans who have chronic issues. That's who I teach, and that's what I teach. And so as much as all that stuff is, I see so much of it out there, and as much as all that stuff is totally fine for what it is not applicable to the populations that really need yoga. So that being said, what does it mean to do a balance pose in a chair? Some people, maybe they're going to do warrior three, with the chair, some people, but again, that's like somebody who has more mobility. If I was doing warrior three at the nursing home and people could actually stand up, I'd be doing something like this, folks, maybe, foot close to the floor, hand on a wall. So balance ideas for people that are actually doing chair yoga because they have to sit in a chair for whatever reason. It's typically a mobility reason, right? So then I want to work with things like lifting one heel, right? So tippy toes, I put in the description. Lifting one heel, that can be great. This can be great because I'm activating the proprioceptors and mechanoreceptors on the bottom of the feet. Fantastic, right? That can be helpful. Maybe sitting up at the front of the chair. Of course, I never ask people to move their chair around, by the way. Now you don't touch the chair goes in place and you sit in it and you never move the chair around in those settings. It's impossible. It would be impossible. And many of the chairs that exist in those settings, you have to be very psychologically flexible as a yoga teacher to be okay working with stuff like that. So, but sometimes, I had people in wheelchairs like this. I'm not going to ask them to sit up the front of their chair. It just wasn't happening. But some people can scoot up to the front of the chair. And now I can work with lifting one leg. I'm balanced. I have to balance here to lift that one leg up. And for some people, lifting the leg looked more like I just did lifting the heel or sliding the foot out in front. Almost never asked people to take their shoes off, by the way, in nursing home settings. That would have been a very logistical challenge, right? Because many people in the group, and then you've got maybe one caregiver with you. I had one CNA, so like it's just way too much to take off the shoes. But you can work with feel the sensations of your feet against the shoe. Fantastic, starting to build those sixth and seventh senses, the interoception and the proprioception. So one leg off the floor, that's a balance pose. Now, a contralateral, right? Contralateral movement is fantastic for the brain. So maybe one arm, one leg, and then the other arm, the other leg, and you can do that with breath. And that can take work. This requires core strength to lift that leg up and balance, right? So balance doesn't have to be standing up and doing balancy stuff. It can also happen in a chair. I can also be working contralateral stuff like one arm goes out to the side this way and the other one goes up this way, right? So like those sorts of movements are really good for the brain, challenge the brain a little bit, add a heel, and now I've got a balance pose, right? Because you're balancing in the toe. So I hope that sort of like creative approach to variations of asanas that are actually accessible for folks who need to be in chair doing chair yoga. I hope that creative approach is helpful for you if you're working with those populations. I teach a lot about chair yoga in my my teachings, my workshops and stuff. I teach a lot of chair yoga workshops and have been doing that for a number of years. But I do think we have to be really sort of honest about the people that need chair yoga. And it's not the same as people who go to a yoga studio. It's a very different population. And also working with chair yoga folks, a lot of times it makes sense to go to them, to places like the senior centers or places like adult learning education places, and certainly nursing homes, assisted living, independent living facilities. All of those kind of places can be great places for sharing chair yoga. I hope this stuff is helpful for you. Please leave me a note, a comment, anything else you're interested in about chair yoga or yoga in general. I do have a workshop coming up in October. We'll have information about that soon. It's called Somatic Subtle Yoga. What I do is somatic, always has been, but I wanted to sort of emphasize the subtle body part of somatics. And so that's what I'll be doing in this workshop, and I will have more information for you coming up on that very soon. Thank you so much for being here. Please leave a comment. See you next time.